Hello and welcome to Creatively Torn, where I mostly talk about books and sometimes don't. Today I just want to talk some more about Red Rising. I made a video about a month or so ago giving my overall thoughts on the original trilogy, which of course is a sci-fi series by Pierce Brown, yada yada yada, you know this already. But now I've read the two books in the sequel series that are currently out, so I just want to do an informal review here, just to both of them in general, and just the sequel series in comparison to the originals. So fair warning, there may contain spoilers for the first three books. I won't go too deep into the plot or anything, but some things might come up naturally. As for Iron Gold and Dark Age, I shouldn't really spoil anything from either of those books, so you're probably good if you haven't completely caught up with both of those yet. But as for the first trilogy, I may have to spoil some things just to talk about them. But just to recap, I had a great time reading Red Rising and Golden Sun and Morning Star. They're fast-paced sci-fi action books with a ton of badass moments and banging quotes. There are some really cool characters and some brutal death scenes. The story is fairly generic at first before kind of going its own way and becoming more unique. It's pretty basic in terms of complexity and depth. It's really just primarily about action and war, with nothing too much beyond the surface level. But I'm glad to say that the sequel series is pretty much all those things, but cranked up several levels in just about every aspect. I'd say the biggest difference is the pacing, but I'll go over that in a few minutes. As for the similarities, both Iron Gold and Dark Age, two sequel books that are currently out, have lots of action and war discussions and strategy and all those things. They also include much more on the political side, and then we even get to see things from the perspective of civilians as well when it pertains to this overall societal war. The badassery is still there for sure, only now it is more spread out rather than just being focused on Darrow. You get to see a lot of other characters doing their own things outside of him and his events. The characters are still very likable, despite most of them having done some heinous things by now. But they all struggle with things and they all have things to overcome. So needless to say, the character work here is just as good as the first books, if not better. The violence and the gore is extremely amplified in the sequels, I'll say. This might be another one of the bigger differences. There are some intense things in these books. Put some of the stuff in the earlier books to shame for sure, because there's really no pull punches when it comes to anybody or anything getting destroyed by the events that happen in these books. So going back to what I mentioned before about the pacing, the sequels are going to be much slower and more methodical than the original trilogy. Some of that has to do with the inclusion of more politicking and planning and setting up of these new plot threads. Some of it is also due to the nature of the new structure these books take. So where the first trilogy is first-person point of view, main character Darrow at all times, the sequels introduce new POVs in each book. Some of them are from established characters and some are completely new people you get to meet. And so because of that, the story is really spread out to accommodate these new characters and their situations and their surroundings. I think that is done very well, as they all are very unique and all different things to do within their chapters, while also still feeling at home within the tone of the story that we're already used to. Many of these POVs also lead to events that tie together in some ways. I think that also has been handled very well so far. Another thing I wanted to mention was the more mature tone and the writing style that's evident in the sequels. So obviously, as writers write more books, they will enhance their skills. I think that is very much evident in these sequels. The series has always leaned into the history and classical literature aspects and references, but it really comes to the forefront when you open up Iron Gold and see a quote by Henry Wadsworth Longfellow before the story even begins. And just along with that, I think the level of writing has definitely increased. Just looking at the structure of the plot and the characters and things like that, I think it's pretty evident that it's come a long way. And as it is, the plot and characters have naturally matured as well. So these books take place around 10 years after the events of the originals. So characters have grown up and they've started families. The societal changes that we saw at the end of Morningstar are now in place and are experiencing their own issues as well. There's going to be consequences to things that did happen in the first trilogy. They're not coming to light. And suffice it to say, all things are not well in the worlds. So Iron Gold and Dark Age have been some of my favorite books in the series so far, which is really saying something because I liked all 3 of the original books as well. So if you haven't noticed by now, I'm very much still a fan. Iron Gold does seem like it's going to be more of a setup for the rest of the books, but even as it is still a stellar ride in its own way. Dark Age I did struggle with at the beginning, to be honest. It was just very slow, and some of the plot threads that were left hanging from Iron Gold weren't immediately picked up, and when they were kind of not exactly what I was expecting. But somewhere in the middle, things did really start to take some absolutely wild turns, and then never really stops from there. So I ended up really liking that book as well. Maybe my favorite, maybe not. I really can't say it at this time which one I like more. But all in all, the Red Rising series continues to impress me, and in a few more days the newest book will be released. So I will likely do a review or a video of some kind once I do finish reading that. So do stay tuned if you're into that sort of thing. But really that's about all I think I wanted to say here. So I'm going to go ahead and end the video here. Go ahead and follow me on the social things if you want to. I do hope you enjoyed the video. I really do recommend reading this series if you haven't yet. If you're into sci-fi and action or ancient Roman history and things like that, you really get a kick out of this series. So I do recommend giving it a chance. But anyways, thank you for watching, or pretending to watch, or whatever you are doing here. Thank you for the click. That's all I have, so thank you for watching and see you later.